Well, I think last night what we saw was an epic historical event nationwide for one, but especially here in Kentucky. And really, when you look at all the things that happened last night, Kentucky was at the epicenter of a lot of historical events. Leader McConnell was able to keep the U.S. Senate against a lot of headwinds nationally. They felt like in those states where they had competitive battlegrounds that he would probably lose the Senate, but he was able to retain it. We now have a U.S. president with somewhat of a mandate. I mean, he had a pretty convincing victory last night, well over 270 that it takes of the Electoral College to get elected. And here in Kentucky, we saw us go from a minority to a supermajority. We went from 47 members to 64 in one election cycle. And there are so many people that were involved in that need to be thanked on our side. But the citizens of Kentucky, I think, sent a strong message that they're looking for a government that is working for them again.
So you were the key recruiter in finding these candidates to run on the Republican side. So what did you look for in these candidates, and what's going to make them a good member of the House?
Well, one of the things that we set out to do to make it different from past election cycles this cycle was go from looking at what these people were to more about who these people are, and especially who they are in their community, what they mean to their community. And I mean, it was literally for miles and miles, months and months, just with a sheet of paper and a pen going around the communities and talking to people who are engaged, saying, you know, who would you look at as a representative for your district? You know, who would you feel comfortable with sending to Frankfort? And you know, we were able to find some amazing people, from retired troopers to pastors to teachers to business owners. I mean, we just have some truly incredible people that are going to be coming to Frankfort. And when you look at the Republican side coming into Frankfort in January, we're going to have 23 new Republicans. 17 beat incumbent Democrats last night, but we're going to have 23 new Republican members that are going to be in the state house. And that's going to be a challenge of its own that we're going to have to face in our caucus to make sure that we initiate and that we train those members that are coming in to understand what their role is going to be in Frankfort and how the process gets done, and how kind of the sausage is made, for lack of a better term. But you know, we're prepared to do that. We've been preparing for it for 2 years now, not only on the political side, but also on the policy side.
So now with all these new changes, obviously you talked a little bit about training these members, but what comes next in terms of the process?
So we're going to start having caucus meetings. We're going to kind of pull back a little bit, but we're going to huddle up and we're going to talk as a caucus on how we see moving this state in the right direction. We'll do leadership races before the end of the year. I think we'll start getting into trying to put together what our agenda is going to look like for Kentucky. And I think that what you're going to see mainly is a pro-business and looking in ways of how to make everyday Kentuckians' lives easier and how to grow the prosperity in Kentucky. And you know, we have so many great ideas that for so long we're just putting the receptacles in Frankfort and thrown away as trash. And those things are going to be taken in serious consideration now that we have a Republican Speaker of the House in what will soon be Jeff Hoover, and a Republican-led State House of Representatives with some great new members that are coming in.
For the first time since 1921. So
Yeah.
What are some of these issues that you guys are looking at?
Well, I want to make a point with that. It's the first time since 1921, but if you go back to the creation of the Republican Party, it's been only 2 years since that time period. So it's really been 2 years out of something like 100, almost 150 years that it's been Democratically controlled. But I think what you're going to see is policies that business have been clamoring for, and a lot of them that the chamber has been looking for as well. You know, you're going to see, my thinking is that a lot of our members in our caucus are going to want to see the stuff on school choice, maybe right to work legislation, different things that the business community has been looking for, tax reform, infrastructure reform. And I think you're going to see a big movement in our caucus that we're going to be wanting to deal with this pension obligation. I mean, it's a huge issue that burdens businesses, and you know, it's not the most sexy issue in the state. It's not something that people are just up in arms about, wanting to get something done about. But whenever you look at it as a business person, you know, how are we going to pay for this unfunded liability? They're looking at that being a burden that this state is going to have to bear, and it may be the taxpayers, the business community that's going to have to bear that burden. And so we have to address that as one of the #1 issues that we're going to have to look at whenever we come back in January.
Now, what do you feel that the Republican caucus's message is to the business community after this election?
Well, I've been telling people that I meet with, businessmen and women across the state and across the country need to call their bankers and round up the investors because we're open for business in Kentucky now.
Now, obviously, some people, Kentucky sent a loud message that this is what they want. I mean, overwhelming. No one really even expected this big of a margin.
Yeah.
But for people who do have concerns, especially now with someone at the national level, a lot of people are not necessarily comfortable with, and now a Republican House, do you feel that the Republican caucus is going to work in a bipartisan way to really get things done for everyone?
Yeah, being in the minority, I can see how we were not treated in a bipartisan manner. I'm the largest farmer in the legislature. We farm on 1,200 acres, cattle, tobacco, hemp, all the different things that we're allowed to do in Kentucky. We participate. We have a very diversified farming community, and I was kicked off the Ag Committee. Now think about that. So it's not always been the most bipartisan manner that we've had in Frankfort, but I know that Jeff Hoover is committed to doing that, and it's going to be very imperative that when we get to Frankfort, that we push aside all the political feelings and we look towards solutions for Kentucky. And I think that we as a caucus are going to be committed to looking for solutions that are going to push the business community forward and that are going to really grow jobs in the state for the people. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we had such a resounding victory, is because people in eastern Kentucky and across the rural parts of the state are truly in some situations of desperation, that they have lost their jobs, they don't see hope. And we, as a Republican caucus with this governor and this Senate, need to be looking towards giving people hope again.